Enter Odysseus. Book 5. We are back at the very beginning, once again on Olympus. Olympus is the home of the gods, where Zeus hangs out and where he has his royal court of sorts where all the other gods gather around him and kiss up to him. It is almost a mirror image of how Book 1 began, a meeting of the gods. And they're talking about Odysseus and Athena bringing up, what are we going to do, Dad? The parallels are not accidental. You start in Olympus, in this divine realm, and then you go from there into the particular and human realm. And throughout, there are a lot of these structures that just seems like, this is kind of a familiar situation. Is he just repeating himself? Can he come up with something new? We're always just sort of playing out the same dynamic. This happens and then this happens. Come on. That's a modern understanding. You got to leave that behind. Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey work on different rules. And here, repetition is significant. We don't like it in the modern age, but this is one way of making a point. Man.
Is it also because it was not like a written poem, it was more oral, so reminding the audience that, hey, that's what the story is again.
Yeah, it, gathers everybody together and says, as we told you last time, although this would all be still like continuous, but also just, in a culture where it's just being spoken or sung at you for several hours, and generally speaking, scholars agree that the Odyssey would generally be performed at perhaps at a festival over the course of 3 8-hour sittings, or roughly that. They can pick up the tempo and speed it up, but you would come in, you'd sit down, and you would hear a stretch of the Odyssey. And the way editors later broke it down into the 24 books, you can have 3 sittings of roughly, 8 books each one taking a certain amount of time. It would be very slow to read them at 8 hours. That was just a figure that I remember from somewhere. But generally speaking, and we'll see, each of those 8 hours increments, or each of those 8 book increments, sort of ends with a significant moment. Yay, showbiz, drama. But here, we're going from book 4, where we're dealing with Telemachus, and now we've got to punctuate that, but now we're getting to what we told you about. Now, here comes the big guy. So you zoom back out. You go back to Olympus, and you remind people that, okay, maybe we're kind of just starting this over. We're going to leave Telemachus behind and start somewhere new. Literally, or figuratively rather, turning the page, because we cannot literally turn the page. This isn't written. We have no way of indicating that we're changing scenes without doing something like that. So, Ankit, how are we doing? Tell me about book 5.
Sure, so book 5, like you said, it begins with all the gods together, and Athena pleads Zeus again, please let Odysseus free from Calypso, and this time he kind of relents this time, and he's okay, we'll send Hermes, the messenger, the guy, to Calypso.
The gopher god.
Yeah, and Hermes,
there's no dignity in his role. Sorry.
Hermes goes to Calypso and basically tells her, you gotta let him go. And meanwhile, you see Odysseus, he's been there even though he's been there for 7 years, you can see that he's looking outside of the island, and it kind of shows hey, even though he's been trapped here, he still misses his family, he still misses his kids.
Stop.
Okay.
Again, you're just plowing through stuff.
Okay.
Set the scene. Enjoy the characters. Tease out the personalities a little bit. Hermes, good guy, bad guy, what do you think? Kind of. Your word, not mine. I think I've used that word, so it's a silly time to get that. But why do you say that?
Well, it's because like when he goes there, it's kind of like he kind of just like just tells her fun up, and then like he kind of caused Calypso to go on like a tirade about like the, how like Zeus and all the other male gods can like get away with like having all of these like female lovers. Meanwhile, when Calypso does it with the one guy that she actually fell in love with, Hermes comes in and kind of like cock blocks her, and then like says, no, you can't do that. You gotta send him back home. And then so yeah, so Calypso kind of like gets really angry, and the worst part is like Hermes tells her like, hey, like you also have to like make him a boat. You also gotta like make all give these
Yeah.
provisions. And it's kind of like just rubbing salt on her wound.
Yeah, she doesn't want to do it, but
Yeah.
she has to pitch in and take an active role in it too. Yeah, Hermes is a little bit thick. Line like 97. You are a goddess, I a god, and yet you ask me why I am here. Well, I'll tell you. Zeus ordered me to come. I did not want to. Who would desire to cross such an expanse of endless salty sea? You live in a shithole, and I had to come all the way here. No human town is near here where gods get fine sacrifices. Still, none can sway or check the will of Zeus. It's such an imposition on Hermes. He is the messenger god. He was told to deliver a message, but that's too much to ask. So he's got to bring some tude to it. And yeah, Calypso takes some umbrage, perhaps at the tone, perhaps at the substance of the message, but clearly, she has a very sharp point to make. Calypso shuddered and let fly at him. You cruel, jealous gods, you bear a grudge whenever any goddess takes a man to sleep with as a lover in her bed. Just so the gods who live at ease were angry when rosy-fingered Dawn took up with Orion from her golden throne, chased Artemis, attacked him, and killed him with her gentle arrows. Again, the context, it's a little bewildering, but she is offended. She just wants someone to love. She's all alone. Hermes already tipped off that she lives kind of, out in the middle of nowhere. An island in the middle of an endless expanse of sea. We don't hear about anybody else there. Now, she is a goddess of sorts, a nymph, I believe. Exactly what that entails, I don't know. I don't really care. Maybe she can, bazinga herself out of there with a blink. Maybe she can't. But clearly, she has a connection with Odysseus, and, boy toy or not, she wants him. She likes having him around. And her treatment of him is really, it's not terrible. Granted, yes, he's sort of a slave, but, not necessarily the worst living conditions. Yeah.
Like to add something into it, but like this kind of shows how the double standard of the gods comes in. How the male gods can do whatever they want and just get away. When the goddess does something, they have to like be faithful and not to do anything and be like from females basically to be faithful and stuff like that. So, yeah.
But it's not just the gods. Who else? Yeah. This double standard runs a couple of different ways. You can see it with gods. You can see it with human beings. Women, females, if you want to include goddesses there, are not considered. Oh, you want your little plaything? Oh, too bad. It sucks. And then, you could very easily toss out that Hermes is trying to mansplain to her why she has to give him up. And she is outraged. She is offended. But if you take another step back and leave aside the gender aspect of it, Zeus is this abstract authority figure way on high. He couldn't really be bothered coming to tell the underling how it's going to be. So he sent a messenger, and the messenger came in, and he himself was not thrilled to be consorting with the commoners. It's pretty freighted with class as well. The aristocracy in that structured society isn't always so considerate of the underlings in that, however high up they may be. They may be a god, they may be a goddess, but there's always somebody above them. And how the hierarchy, how members of the hierarchy treat one another is significant, because that can create, if it is insensitive, if it is perhaps a little boorish, that can create some dissension, some resentment, some eris. These same notes are being struck again and again. Enter Odysseus. Calypso relents, says, okay, Hermes, you got your way. I'll help him leave. She goes to Odysseus, finds him on the shore. His eyes were always tearful. He wept street life away in longing to go back home, since she no longer pleased him. Which is a little cold, you know, she no longer pleased him. But still, you know, technically he is married. Goddess or not, Calypso is the other woman. The dynamics in this are complicated. And we are introduced to her first, I think, in order to heat up that complication a little, to make us think a little bit more from her perspective of what this is. Because if she is just, you know, the tramp who stole him away, it's easy to dismiss that. But by starting with her and giving her that speech, that personality at the beginning, we're kind of on her side. Yeah, don't send him back to the wife. He spends his days down at the shore, staring out. Maybe he's homesick. Maybe he's just lost in thought. But there's something on his mind. And the focus on the eyes is a hint. The eyes are the windows to the soul, and we're told to focus on his eyes. And the whole rest of the poem will be about seeing what's going on with him. The goddess stood by him and said, "Poor man, stop grieving, please. You need not waste your life. I am quite ready to send you off now." Doesn't mention that she's being ordered to. Saving a little face there. "Using your sword of bronze, cut trunks and build a raft, fix decks across, and let it take you across the misty sea. I will provide water." See, I will provide. Again, she's demanding a little dignity here. I will do this, I will do that. Claiming agency, claiming power. No mention that she is doing this under duress. "I will provide water, red wine, and food to stop you starving, and I will give you clothes and send a wind to blow you safely home. If this is what these sky gods want," very vague, "they are more powerful than me, they get their way." In the end, she's almost talked herself into it. She's broken down a little bit. In the end, she can't help deny that she doesn't want to do this. But look at his reaction. Again, the first line. "Odysseus, informed by many years of pain and loss, shuddered. and let his words fly out at her. Do words fly out if they are well thought out? No. So if words fly out, maybe this is a hint that he should say this part very quietly, or maybe not at all. But you're not always reasonable. No one is. And this is part of the complexity and the richness of this character is he has the capacity to be wonderfully logical and brilliant in his use of reason, but he doesn't always do it. Sometimes his ego gets in the way. Goddess, you have some other scheme in mind, not my safe passage. You are telling me to cross this vast and terrifying gulf in just a raft, when even stable schooners sped on by winds from Zeus would not succeed? No, goddess, I will not get on a raft unless you swear to me a mighty oath you are not planning yet more pain for me. Now, she has just told him that I'm going to set you free. He's been on this island for years. Presumably, this is good news that he can leave. But on the one hand, he's thinking too much about it because he is saying, well, what's your motivation? What's behind this? I don't trust you. You could just be sending me out to my death. Consequences. The next step. Always thinking. Polytropon. Always turning. But it is also an intemperate comment. It is something maybe he should have thought and just said, well, gee, thanks, Calypso. That's great. Thank you so much. I'm going to go get some wood and we'll get started building this together. And then he can always watch and wait for, the little surprise that he thinks is coming. But you can see this push-pull immediately of a little bit of ego. He's lashing out at her in one respect, but a little bit of reserve and always thinking, what could she be plotting? Maybe this is fair. She has essentially kept him as a slave for several years, and there are going to be some hurt feelings there. But she offers to him the opportunity to stay. Do you really want to go home, to go back to that home you love so much? This is like line 200. Well then, goodbye. And again, you can see some hurt feelings here. She's sort of like getting twisted up in her own ego. But if you understand how glutted you will be with suffering before you reach your home, and this is true, he will be, you would stay here with me and be immortal, though you might still wish to see that wife you always pined for. A great speech by the other woman. You can have some fun with this. And anyway, I know my body is better than hers is. I am taller, too. Mortals can never rival the immortals in beauty. Again, she's trying to save a little face here. She's trying to find some dignity to hang her hat on. But she is offering immortality. He can stay on that island and live forever. And she will never get old. She'll always look like she does right now. Presumably, there's plenty to eat. Presumably, it's a beautiful little island that I'm sure would cost a fortune to build a little Airbnb on. Why leave? Yeah, the wife. Haven't seen her for 20 years. She probably thinks I'm dead. Life's pretty good there. Why go home? Live forever with a goddess. Lots of food, Nookie nookie every day. Uh, why? Would you go home?
She will be in charge all the time. It's her house still.
Who?
Not Calypso's house. That's not his.
Calypso wears the pants in this family, yes. She is the boss. He is her boy toy. Yeah, there's that. He wants the dignity of being the king. He doesn't like being kept as a common gigolo. That's very true. Why else?
I mean, another thing is like, there's only like, I mean, Calypso might have been beautiful in the beginning, right? But if you live with someone for 7 years, like, you're not really gonna care about how. I mean, it's like, yeah, but like, for Odysseus, like, maybe she was pleasing to him in the beginning, but like, if you guys are gonna have fun times together for 7 years, eventually you start thinking about like other things, you know, like your wife and kids, you know, who are probably.
Yeah. 7 years is a long time. It's a blink in the eye in many respects as well, I'll say. I have been married for more than 7 years, and I adore my wife.
But again, just to add to his, remember, like in the beginning, you were saying every time they were being conquering an area and all those slaves, like the women slaves, they're gonna be like, of course, like with them all the time, even if they have a wife. Like the way, what is that god's name? The one comes back, Abraham, he comes back and to his wife, but still he brings some woman with. So he's probably thinking that if he stays with her, it's gonna be all the time her, but he would not have any other option of woman.
Yeah. There is very little sense of monogamy in this context. Zeus is a serial womanizer, and that drips down into everybody. And, for the past, I think he's been on this island for like 10 years. He has been a married man having, nookie nookie happy fun times with the goddess. It is a questionable ethical grounds in terms of monogamy. But leave aside the female aspect of it. What about the mortality? If you go home, you're going to get old. You're going to start to feel aches and pains. He's been away for a long time. You're going to go home and, well, let's face it, it's all downhill. You're going to start to feel pain. Maybe your hair is going to fall out. Maybe your teeth are going to fall out. Life is full of those little indignities. And then, of course, the final indignity, you're going to die. You will cease to exist. You really want to go back to that? What's the draw? Why would anyone?
Will it be power?
What's that?
Power.
What about power?
When he goes back home, he's going to be the king and he has the power.
He will be the king. As been pointed out, on this island, he is not the king. On this island, he is the subject. Calypso is in charge. If he goes back, he will be the king again. He will be reasserting himself as the patriarchal authority in his life. But that's just on a social level. On a personal level, he is choosing to die. He is choosing to go home and accept death. Why?
I mean, I think it's because, like, a lot of people might think that living forever could be a great thing, but, like, I think for Odysseus, at least you'd rather, like, die living like the life that you had, the life that you want, which is like with Ithaca, with your wife and kids who you spent like 20 years basically away from, rather than living forever with a Calypso, which even though you live forever, like do you really want to live forever with Calypso? Like
or anyone.
yeah, like I mean, he basically had a 7-year marriage with her already, and if he's already tired of her after 7 years, I don't know if he wants to live forever. Like I think he'd rather be happy living in Ithaca with his wife and his son,
Yeah.
and then rather because like sometimes sometimes living forever isn't a great thing, and you'd rather die happy than live sad.
Yeah.
Sad,
But it's the acceptance of death. It's the willingness to go home and die, to accept that as the consequence. His choice in doing that is, in a way, life affirming. Because when you wake up every day and you're exactly the same, you never age, the person next to you never ages, everything is always perfect, everything is always calm and placid and beautiful, it's kind of boring. There's no interest there. Everything is always the same. And in a way, he would be like a god. But if being a god means you're just laying around being bored all the time, maybe being a man is better. Maybe death, our mortality, is an asset. It gives meaning to life. The gods and goddesses that we see up here are all immortal of a sort. They're born, they don't die. They're not necessarily happy. They don't necessarily have productive lives. They just spend eternity bickering at one another. How satisfying is that? How gratifying is that? It's significant. He is choosing to go home and die. He is choosing to accept that not because it's a lesser choice, but because it's his only choice. He is and wants to be human. He has the opportunity to pretend to be a god, and he can live forever and have all the trappings of it, but ultimately his pull is to his human world. Yes, that's cloaked in the power structure of he wants to be king again, but I think it is all tied up with going home, seeing Penelope, meeting his son, who was an infant when he left, and reconnecting with that social network that defines us as human beings. He's very into defining himself as a human being. He is very driven by his ego. And to just lay around in nothing all day is emasculating. To say nothing of the fact that, yes, he's taking orders from the female. So it's not a minor point to pass over. Death defines life. You can't be alive unless you accept that you're going to die.